Welcome, symbol lovers, to another exciting edition of Understanding the Symbols of Hieronymus Bosch. And this is the third part in our series answering the question, who is the man in the dead tree? And in part 3, we're going to be specifically answering the question, is this a self-portrait of Hieronymus Bosch? And it is found in the Garden of Earthly Delights, an altarpiece consisting of 5 parts, 2 outer panels that open up to reveal the 3 inner panels. And we will be concerning ourselves mostly with the right panel, the so-called hellscape. And as I repeated to exhaustion in part 2, this is not a picture of the afterlife. This is a picture of the spiritual life, the daily life of Hieronymus Bosch. Bosch was 50 to 60 years old when he painted the Garden of Earthly Delights. And as best we can tell, he looked like this. Here we have a gaunt man. He has a thin nose, a pointy chin, and very definite cheekbones. Whereas our man in the dead tree is young and healthy looking. He has a full face, a rounded chin, and a rather thick bridge to his nose. So if this isn't Hieronymus Bosch, who in hell is he? And I think he's this guy, whoever he is. Note the happy and healthy full cheeks, that full nose, and that rounded chin, and the same soulful sad eyes. This face comes from a different painting painted about the same time, known as The Crowning with Thorns. You can tell the man is wealthy and important by his great big hat. But he is also wearing a dog collar, so he is someone's dog. And so this is likely Pontius Pilate. He's very sympathetic, and he seems to be hoping that Jesus will save himself before anything terrible happens. And when we compare his sad, soulful eyes to the eyes of the man in the dead tree, we kind of see how this is a much better match than with what we know of Hieronymus Bosch. But now consider this man. The books identify this as being by Bosch or by the Bosch workshop or simply by an admirer of Bosch. But you can see how everybody might get confused because our crossbow expert here, he looks a whole lot like the dog of Rome as well as the man in the tree. They all have the same face, and none of them resemble Hieronymus Bosch. And I think this guy was a beloved member of the Bosch workshop, and his face turns up a lot because he was there. He was convenient to serve as a model. However, if it's a self-portrait of Hieronymus Bosch you want, you need to look no farther than the bottom of the same panel. In the foreground, there are 2 characters that are making direct eye contact with us. That is, they are very much aware that we are here, and they're trying to talk to us. And they have well-developed cheekbones, a slightly pointy chin in that widow's peak. And I say unto you that these are 2 self-portraits of Hieronymus Bosch, one dealing with his personal domestic life, and the other dealing with his work life. In this picture of work life, we can see that Bosch is being set upon by a giant rat, and it's a giant religious rat. We can tell by the shield on his back and by the pierced hand of Jesus that's on the shield. So he's got that pierced hand of Jesus as a souvenir. The violence-loving rats of this world have severed themselves off from the blessings of Jesus by practicing doing to others what they would not want done to themselves. So in this way, they have pierced the hand of Jesus. They have joined the tormentors. And this is as good a time as any to remind you again that at the time that the Garden of Earthly Delights was painted, the church was running its own torture chambers. The Spanish Inquisition was in full swing, and the church already had a 500-year history of burning its enemies at the stake with the help of the state. It was a church-state religion. Bosch was not a Christian. He was a heretic. That is, he was an Ebionite, the oldest form of heresy. That is, he was a heretic from the viewpoint of the murderous church. But we're here to speak of happier things. Playful self-portraits. And, if you'd like a few more, you need only look to the bottom third of the Garden of Earthly Delights, the center panel, where we can identify more self-portraits of Hieronymus Bosch, again by their eye contact with us. They know we're here, they want to communicate with us, and they have that widow's peak, the little sharp chin, and those very sharp cheekbones. So why would Bosch provide us with so many little self-portraits? Well, for one thing, if he put on the face of his friends in paradise here, they might all be hauled in for questioning. And you don't want to be questioned by the church. So it's safer just to use his own face over and over again. Plus, it's funny. Plus, there are points he wants to make. And Bosch gets to paint himself at age 30 because this is paradise and everyone's 30 years old in paradise. And he's playing a series of different characters. And all the characters basically are giving you the instructions for paradise. These are all the do's and don'ts that are being acted out. In my opinion, there are oodles of self-portraits of Hieronymus Bosch. He was a spiritual pilgrim or wayfarer. Consider the two wayfarers painted by Hieronymus Bosch. These are the outer panels of the hay wain known as the wayfarer. And what we're looking at is a man who is about to cross a bridge, and on one side there's music and courtship and merriment, but calling his attention is a man on the other side who has fallen amongst robbers. And so our man here, our impoverished man of the road, has to choose. Is he going to go cross that bridge into merriment and happiness, or will he respond like the Good Samaritan in the parable by Jesus? If you look hard, you can see a gallows on that hill directly over his head. This is another wayfarer by Bosch. He too has picked up his walking stick, but he has a Bosch owl over his head. So he is doing the wise thing. He is turning his back on that terrible establishment, and he's following the narrow path to the gate, where he'll just have to put up with a little more bull. However, these are typical heroes for Hieronymus Bosch, and I would suggest they make far better candidates as self-portraits of Hieronymus Bosch. They are not glamorous or wealthy or heroic. They are just moral men making their way through a very dark world. So the first reason that I don't think that the man in the dead tree is a self-portrait is because it doesn't look like him. And the second reason is because the man in the dead tree, who I identified as Zacchaeus, is far too grand a character for Bosch to be putting his face on. It would be the same as if he painted a picture of the crucifixion and put his own face on the face of Jesus. It would be so pretentious. And the same thing would apply to the man in the dead tree. And I think I can illustrate this real quick with another look at the temptation of Saint Anthony. And of course, right in the dead center of the temptation of Saint Anthony, we have the face of Saint Anthony. So Bosch wouldn't put his face right there and as the focal point of that famous and popular saint, but look at the characters in the left panel that are helping poor St. Anthony cross that last bridge. We know the names of the two monks that escorted him. That was David and Roger. But that fourth character, he doesn't fit into the story. He's been added. And that is where we find a self-portrait of Hieronymus Bosch. It would be the height of pretension for him to paint his face on the famous Saint Anthony, but the hell if he was going to paint his ass off and produce this great masterpiece and not work his face in there somewhere. Another example of a self-portrait of Hieronymus Bosch can be found in the painting known as Saint John on Patmos. Here he is having a vision from heaven given to him by that angel, believe it or not, down in the lower right corner. And we can tell this is a good angel by using the Bible to read the various symbols. On his head he has a censer of burning coals, and on his shoulders he has those fireproof gloves that will help him use those coals properly at the proper time. And he has the wings of a dove and the tail of a serpent, all of which points to him being a good, dedicated follower of Jesus. And of course, it looks exactly like you know who. And who else would he put there, really? And of course it says Hieronymus Bosch in giant letters underneath him. The etching of Hieronymus Bosch was done some 60 years after his death, but I think the man who did it based the etching on this picture of Hieronymus Bosch because it was understood that it was a self-portrait. So, to sum up, Zacchaeus is saying, look past the dead tree, that is, the church, but look to that place of great metamorphosis, which was the life of Jesus. Jesus is past now, but what's left behind of his life is found in the Gospels. So if you take the straight and narrow course, that is the teachings of Jesus, you will find refreshments for your soul in this dark and terrible world. In Bosch symbolism, the walking stick symbolizes a person who has picked up his cross, symbolically, to follow after Jesus. And an arrow in the butt means in doing so, they had to risk death. So the pilgrim going up the ladder is far more likely to be meant as a self-portrait of Hieronymus Bosch. And so for the devout heretic, Zacchaeus, the man in the dead tree, would be too important an icon for Bosch to be putting his face on. And if you get locked into the idea that this is what Hieronymus Bosch looked like, then you're going to cut yourself off from enjoying all the many self-portraits that he's put throughout his work. And if you miss the self-portraits, you'll miss the fun. And we don't want to see you missing out on fun here on understanding the symbols of Hieronymus Bosch. Thanks for watching.